So then, we are back with more understandings on the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then, we can understand the time of the end as per Yirmiyahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then the prophet Yirmiyahu, you then understand a very compact section of the instructions as far as prophecy is concerned. And then, prior of explaining Revelation, as it was mentioned the last audio, it is imperative. Prior of these, then let's truly understand what means church. The word truly, from the original manuscripts, they simply do not relate any kind of reference as far as there's church. The word doesn't exist. Then, in order to replace this word with another word equivalent, so people then don't have a sense of void, let's understand the word then congregation. Congregation merely points of a group of people coming together and studying the instructions. That's what it is. Church, however, is a group of people related with a system. Thus then we understand the 1,000 years of the Messiah, when he was then in charge of the Holy of Holies of each city, and then later cities were no more. Thus then comes the phrase the New World Order. Then you find then the church and organization related with this New World Order, because the holy cities were no more. So then, what does it take then via these explanation, so people they can understand church does not exist? Let's then point of a fact. Let's make a comparison. During the time of the Messiah, as he was explaining situations related with the instructions, then came a point where he began to use money description type of situation, so it would draw the interest of the people. Let's say you have money, paper money. The paper itself does not have any value. What you trust in the piece of paper, because it's numbers, the figure, or then the picture, or design, makes you believe this piece of paper has value, but the paper itself doesn't. It's not even a gold standard anymore. What doesn't make it value is your belief. Your belief system indicates this piece of paper has value. Church is the same situation. You have an organization where you think there is value, but when you evaluate, simply doesn't exist. But then let's prove. Where do you find Matityahu? He was obviously a priest of the Holy Temple. He was involved with tabernacling. And then Matityahu explained, as we understand, Kepha was then the nickname of Shimon. Peter is simply his nickname from the Greco language. And the understanding is Shimon was a hard-headed person. His head, his understanding, his mind was like a rock. Not because he was strong, but he was plainly, absolutely, without a question, a person that would not move an inch. There is its positive side and its negative side. Kepha, because he was straightforward, he didn't care who the person was, he spoke then the truth. At times, because of the sincerity of Shimon, then the Messiah said, because of this tenacity and desire for truth with such a strength, so likewise my tabernacling must be as, or like such. He never said church because the word does not exist. Now, the situation is, if you take a piece of money and you believe there is value, then it does. But when do you understand the value of gold, where it was used as a standard for the measuring of money? Then you realize the piece of paper has no value. It's only what you believe. Tabernacling has value because the Messiah received the authority from heaven and earth and was given him, and started the blueprint with Moshe or Moses. Later, because cities were no more, came the time of deceit, time of mockery, time of slandering. Cities were no more, and then there was a new world order where then the church became what people believe as salvation of some sort. Prior of explaining revelation, in order for the people to become then revealed, if they have any linkage with the system that does not exist, they won't ever understand revelation. Firstly, because they think they are of some sort of a divine system, and the system does not exist. Secondly, believe a Savior that does not regard the holy instructions when the true Savior does. Thirdly, then, they understand themselves as some sort of tabernacle of their very own. How ludicrous. Blasphemy is beyond measure. People reject the instructions and they think themselves as then tabernacle of the Spirit. It's then similar as showing you a piece of money and you ask the person, does this piece of money has value? How do you measure the value of the piece of money? By the gold standard. Most of the monies of the world, they are not anymore involved with standarding of gold. It's a mere piece of paper. So as this so-named church. It doesn't exist. It's what people placed the value upon because great morals, honesty, reliability, and so on and so forth, and the great trades of what they believe as a Savior. So they came together and formed a group, but unfortunately became a system. Now, are these people condemned if they don't understand tabernacling? Obviously they are. because the Mashiach and the Shilishim, they obviously spoke of. The Mashiach warned them, and then the Shilishim, or apostles, they also warned them. But then a person was brought up decades of these church junk, and then later on in their lives they can't believe they were deceived, and they begin, the first situation comes to their minds, oh, because then the Savior back then formed the church. No, he did not. The Mashiach was always against congregations mixed up with money in the first place. And sometimes it doesn't have to be only church, but can be any religious organization involving money. But if they have some sort of understanding of a Savior of sorts, then what they believe truly is not true. So Kifa, these were then the Mashiach spoke of. He was then making a reference of Shimon, known as Peter, and because of his sincerity, so likewise his tabernacling would be as such, or would have become as such. But for some people it's not enough. They want another proof, but then the church does not exist. Now then, how you replace then a church with another organization? Simply means congregation. Congregate, people get around of their daily lives, and they gathered, so then they read the instructions. They layer the prophecies, they layer the understandings, the instructions. Unfortunately, in Sudan, yesterday came out news, and they are destroying, slaughtering, butchering. People are dying over there by the hundreds. And no wonder, because the enemy of the world, he lives in the world. He knows the Holy Tabernacle is going to be in the land of Cush. As the world is preparing itself for the first holy city of the restoration period, obviously is going to provoke war. But how can you take 1,000 years of deceit, 1,000 years of doing the same thing, same repetitions, and then showing them the truth? Obviously they won't believe, because they have mixed their beliefs with money, with the government. Should they be condemned to doing so? Obviously not. Are they themselves condemned? They already are. So the gradual understanding of these is making a shift from church and then change the congregation. Until people understand this factor, explaining Revelation won't do it. If the simple fact people can't understand, when you then explain Revelation or Galah, how are they going to layer those understanding based from the first service and the second services? Yet they are waiting for a Mashiach that he won't ever show up. Because the Savior of the church was made it up. Now, tabernacling is true. You find tabernacling, the word tabernacling, in a Greco translation of the Revelation. Can you understand this factor? Even those ignorant Greco people making translations from the original manuscripts, they did place the translation properly recorded. Tabernacling. So then when you read some of the original Greco translations, you find tabernacling repeatedly. Now then later on, those copies were then changed from a word that was true, and then they placed church and doesn't exist. Should you be aware of being honest and reliable and sincere? Absolutely. But you are truly trying then to save your own soul. You're not trying to save mine or anybody else. The path of salvation is equal to every person. What makes it clear is the desire of learning tabernacling. The more you learn tabernacling, the brighter the path becomes. And walking in it, it's not easy. If you are thinking of the mamby-pamby translation, "Oh, come to me, you who are heavy laden, I'll give you rest." Do you understand what kind of a rest he was speaking of? Oh, he wants to take the weight from your back, so then you have no responsibility as far as understanding tabernacling. No, you can forget it. Resting, he is explaining of the doubts as far as the instructions. Sometimes you are reading Revelation, you don't understand. You are reading the prophets, you don't understand. Then you sense in your very core that those layers must be layers somehow, and then you don't understand. It causes burden. Or do you think the Messiah was explaining people going to work every day, and then he wants to take the responsibility away from people's lives? Is the Messiah then detached from the everyday living? No, he's very aware of it. The only problem is mundane world cares is a situation, tabernacling is another. When you are learning tabernacling, you are directly understanding the Savior. When you mix your personal lives or the cares of the world, the Messiah is not part of it, though he is aware of it. But he's not going to take the burdens away from. Not until we understand tabernacling. If we were taught ever since we were children the proper way of tabernacling, then if you would hear of church later on, you'd say it's nonsense. Because as Shaliach Shaul has said, as far as the times and the seasons, you don't have to be taught. Similarly is when you begin then learning tabernacling, then you have to take yourself away from the mold that the world has placed you on and get yourself unglued from the world's mold, so you get yourself unmolded, and then you relearn the way the Messiah taught from the original manuscripts. And when those doubts they come to your mind, then the Messiah spoke. Learn tabernacling, then the path becomes clearer. Your doubts are then taken away. Always regarding tabernacling. Later, I'm going to explain more from the instructions as far as proving churches do not exist. But then replacing it with congregations. And let's read then from the instructions where they are at. But then try to understand this point. You understand a Savior in a certain way. Leave your understanding intact at the moment. When you understand of a Savior, of a Messiah, leave it as it is and learn the rest of the details or facts. And then your understanding of the facts, you on your own understanding the distinction from a Savior and the other. Nobody's questioning your belief. That's why you should not change your views of a Savior yet. Otherwise, you mix the very core of your being with it without the proper knowledge of the instructions. Later on, you're going to find out more from the apostles or Shilishim, and then including Timothy, and then Yaakov, known as James, and then later on we will study then Revelation. And after you understand the facts, you yourself then begin to read Revelation, and truly is not complicated. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.